listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Gwilda Wiyaka's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the Science of Magic or endorsed in any manner by Gwilda Wiyaka, Relmar McConnell Media Company, its affiliated networks, stations, or employees. Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We're coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, and can also be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour we'll be exploring I'm More Than That. I woke up one morning with a horrible realization that no one knew me. Not my husband at the time, nor my children had any clue who I was beyond cook, housekeeper, mother, and wife. My parents only saw me through their own misplaced guilt, therefore I had to be perfect, forever the maiden. My clients saw me as their surrogate mother, while my students embraced me as their wise crone. It was a sobering moment when I realized I was not only unknown to those closest to me, but to myself as well. Everyone I interacted with was presented with one of the three archetypes, none of which represented who I was. For a long time, I feared I was nothing outside of the roles I played, roles that limited my expression and stifled my soul. Boredom and dissatisfaction became epic until one day my husband criticized one time too many for something he thought I was, but was not. His statement made it glaringly obvious he never saw me beyond the role his mother played and her mother before her. I was simply fertile ground for his familial projections. That was the day I stood up and roared. That's not who I am. It never has been. I'm more than that. The poor man thought I'd lost my mind. In a way, I had, as I never thought of myself in the same way again. I spent the next year searching for who I was, yet it was a futile search. I found myself forced into being what was needed rather than who I was, called upon to embrace many archetypes. As my husband became increasingly caught up in his own life to the exclusion of our family, I had to become both mother and father to our children. I trained them in keeping a home and cooking and managing finances. In addition, I taught them wilderness survival, backpacking, tracking, archery, and marksmanship. I even purchased a book to teach myself to fish so I could show them how. I became warrior, competing with them internationally as a second-degree black belt. After my divorce, I was nurturer, healer, protector, and provider. I became a craftsman, designing and overseeing the building of a home to finish raising my children. As they grew older and fought for their independence, I stepped out of mother-father and into wise woman in order to get out of their way and still be there for them as they needed. All of this and more I gladly did for my children, but it was not who I was. They're grown now and off to their own lives. That's as it should be. I'm alone. In that aloneness, I've discovered I'm nothing and no one. And that's as it should be as well. From this place of non-duality, I'm free to dance all the archetypes, yet not confined to any one of them. From this place of beingness, I have ultimate mobility to embrace what's expedient and most useful for the task at hand. Rather than being restricted to a role, my true essence is expressed through embodiment of the appropriate archetype for the situation. When I visit my daughter, I'm grandmother. With my son, I'm friend. I can be crone for my students and mothers for my clients, but in and of myself, I'm nothing. Even while caught up in raising my children, I've been driven to bring truth and healing to those around me. I've always understood we've all been restricted to roles, identities, to the exclusion of our inherent glory. This is the time that old illusions shatter, the days the truth can't hide. Having always wanted to be of service, I thought to do the best I could for this world in transition, give it all I had to give, and then slowly fade into obscurity. Yet I'm finding life has other plans for me now, for you see, I'm more than that. Our guest this hour, LASARA FIREFOX ALLEN, is the best-selling author of Jailbreaking the Goddess, a radical revisioning of feminist spirituality. LASARA provides tools for transformation strategies for embodiment, creating vibrant spaces for personal and collective liberation. Her coaching and teaching weaves together themes of empowerment, embodiment, body positivity, sexual liberation, feminism, and owning our whole selves. LASARA has been proprietor of a thriving online teaching and coaching practice for over a decade. She's helped hundreds of clients through their major life transitions. Her entrepreneurial training for Wild Hearts program is rooted in the joy she derives from helping clients find their purpose and make their mark. After this commercial break, I'll introduce LASARA, and together we'll explore archetypes, embodiment, and liberation. So don't go away. You're listening to The Science of Magic. Prior innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Afterlife expert Roberta Grimes was the first one to say that dying can be fun. Now her best-selling book, The Fun of Dying, is available in stores worldwide. So if you wonder whether death ends life, how it feels to die, or what heaven might be like, The Fun of Dying was written for you. And if you have always been afraid of death, or if you worry that your life has no meaning, let The Fun of Dying ease your fears and bring new meaning to your life. Nothing said in The Fun of Dying is based on the teachings of any religion. Instead, Roberta draws on evidence to explain how death happens, how it feels, and what comes next. A lot of the best death-related evidence was produced in the first half of the 20th century. When it is put together with recent discoveries, it tells a consistent and amazing story. Roberta Grimes blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Her wonderful book, The Fun of Dying, is available on Amazon and at stores worldwide wherever books are sold. You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we will weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Starr began to demonstrate a metaphysical connection to the spirit world as a little girl. Her family noticed the connection, but it was a great-grandmother who told the family that Linnea was indeed gifted. The great-grandmother, who was also gifted, felt that Linnea had indeed inherited these attributes. It has been noticed that oftentimes such things are passed down through the generations. Linnea was also born with a caul, a thin white membrane across a newborn's face. Legend has it that if the baby is born with this caul, the child will have second sight, or what we call psychic abilities. Linnea Starr does past, present, and future, and has the gift of prophecy. It is written within scriptures that if you are able to give factual information, and prophecies indeed come true, the gift indeed comes from the divine realm. Linnea Starr does large interactive groups as well as private gatherings. For more information on Linnea Starr or to contact Linnea for a one-on-one consultation, visit her website at www.linneastar.com. That's www.linneastar.com.
Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is LASARA FIREFOX ALLEN, author of Jailbreaking the Goddess. LASARA derives tools for transformation, provides strategies for embodiment, and creates vibrant spaces for personal and collective liberation. Her website, www.lasarafirefoxallen.com. That's www.lasarafirefoxallen.com. LASARA, thank you so much for joining us on the Science of Magic.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Let's start out by defining archetypes as you see them.
Well, so in Jailbreaking the Goddess, I put forth a model of 5 archetypes, or even they've been experienced by many as more along the lines of entities or goddesses, but I do configure them as archetypes, and I think that it's really useful for us to have access to them. So those 5 are Femella, she's the child. Potens, so we can look at this in a linear manner, but also I'll talk later about the nonlinear application of the 5. So I'm going to tell you in the linear trajectory. So potens, if we're looking at it in a linear context, potens is like the young person getting ready to leave her home or striking out on her own in some way. Potens means strength or able to do. And then we move to creatrix. Now, creatrix, the reason I chose, in the process of choosing these terms, I looked at a lot of different possible words to call these different aspects. Creatrix I chose instead of genetrix, for example, or matrix, because genetrix and matrix both have overlays of actual biological reproduction. And creatrix doesn't have that. Creatrix can apply to biological reproduction, but it is not essentially that. It can also mean author and builder and craftsperson and artist, singer, all of those things. So then we have creatrix, and then we have sapientia. Sapientia is basically the same word as sapiens, so it means knowledge. And she is like the, I think of her as like the wise woman, but also as like the judge and the general. And then we go from sapientia to antiqua, and antiqua just means old woman, very old woman, ancient woman. And so, and she is the wisdom of a life lived. She's also the end of life and that experience of moving into the kind of moving back to that state of innocence that happens at the end.
Okay, so it kind of goes full circle.
Yes, it does.
How fun is that? So what language base are you using for these names?
So the 5 aspects are Latin. I used Latin because
so.
Yeah, because we and they're all they are all basically, most of us have heard variations of these words, right?
Mm-hmm,
but
exactly.
We don't use them in common, everyday language. We aren't necessarily using them as we are going through our lives talking about things.
Okay, so that leaves them more open to the new interpretation that you're giving them, rather than carrying a lot of baggage because they're current language.
Exactly. We have there are so many words that we use, and people like to reclaim words. And I think that there's a lot of power to be found in the reclaiming of certain terms. Absolutely. Like the word witch, for example. But I wanted us to not be fighting against our own conditioning as we're working with reformatting our magical systems.
Got it. So what you did here, correct me if I'm wrong, what you did here was design names for these particular life passages rather than attach them to an existing god or goddesses.
Exactly. And in Jailbreaking the Goddess, in each chapter of the 5, there are, I think, 13 chapters in the book, but the 5 chapters that are focused on these aspects, each, femella, potens, creatrix, sapientia, and antiqua. In each of those chapters, there is a list. There are some examples, living examples of people who I think of as kind of embodiments of these aspects. And then also, in addition to that, there are lists of goddesses from different cultures.
That's nice. So you give a real wide range there for people to identify with.
Exactly. And I talk a lot about the dangers of, cultural appropriation and how to avoid that. So I'm totally not suggesting that people just read through those lists and start willy-nilly, using goddesses to represent that they don't already have a relationship with. But the flip side is that, representation is essential. And as a person in the community, I've been listening to people in the community asking for more representation. And so drawing in different cultural representations felt important to me so that we can all see us in her.
Makes sense. Hey, could you give examples of how people act out archetypes, even if they don't know about them?
Sure. I think, we can look at it even at like the cultural level of like what we, what we put onto cultural, pop culture icons, for example, right? So let's see, what's a good example? So one of the reasons that I'm offering this 5-fold model, right, is to move away from the biological predetermination of what it means to be a woman. And you kind of touched upon that in your initial presentation today, right? With your talking about how people were putting a lot of ideas of who you should be or who they thought you were onto you. And we do that all the time. And so we can think of, like, in pop culture where people really resort to, like, the, you know, good girl versus the siren or the whore, you know, like actresses, right? Where we're putting them on that pedestal. They're either perfect and pure and et cetera, chaste, you know, all of those, you know, sex negative ideas, or they're somehow sinister, right? So, and then also once we've been handed that, like we all know, you know, had a friend or knew a girl in school, right, who everybody said was this or that or the other thing, you know, who was being shamed basically for being sexually expressed, right?
Right.
And once that happens, that woman doesn't own her sexual expression anymore.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
So basically, by shaming that person's expression, we steal it from them. Basically, we disempower their expression. So the fivefold model is very much about allowing people to define those stages for themselves. So there's a lot more open space.
Do you see people moving back and forth through the stages depending on what's going on in their world? And would you speak to that?
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the things about the threefold model is linear because it's biology based, right? So we have the maiden, mother, crone archetypal system. That's linear because maiden. I mean, if we're relying on biological designations, maiden is pre-menarche. Mother is that period where we're bleeding, and then crone is after we've stopped bleeding, right?
Right.
So the fivefold model is not based in our biology because we're more than that. We're more than biology, right? And so we are not basing the five in biology. We're basing it in the lived experience of womanhood. So the five are not linear necessarily because, for example, you might be experiencing multiple aspects in one moment, like during the dying process of an elder in your community. You might be experiencing, you know, someone who you grew up with as a child. You might be experiencing both Femella and Antiqua, right?
Right.
They might both be present for you in that experience because you're remembering being a child and how this person influenced you, right? But you're also shepherding or midwifing the process of dying, right? So you're experiencing both ends of the spectrum. You might be experiencing Femella in a new thing that you like doing a lot, like I'm learning how to play ukulele, and I just started playing Pokemon Go with my kid. So like there's a very kind of pure childish joy to be found in and that's really helpful for me because I have a hard time taking time off from work, right? So if I have a thing to be doing, it's easier for me to not work for longer. So I found this about myself. So playing ukulele or going and playing Pokemon Go or whatever it might be really allows me to experience that childlike glee, that allows me to stay focused on the moment. And that's one of the real gifts of the child of Femella is that presence in the moment. And at the same time, you might be present in, like with the book coming out and being, getting a lot of notice and I'm working a lot, I'm paying attention a lot, and I'm listening to the community and getting the feedback. And so I feel like that's both creatrix and sapientia at the same time.
So we can dance more than one at the same time. This is really intriguing. We're going to have to take a commercial break. LASARA and I will return to our discussion after this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Previous broadcasts of thought-provoking episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. We will be back, so don't you go away.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Thomas Jefferson was a Burgess of 27 when he met Martha Wales Skelton, a 22-year-old widowed heiress who was fondly called Patty by her family. They were married on January the 1st, 1772, and they took up residence in a cabin on the building site on top of a Virginia mountain that Thomas had named Monticello. As Thomas and Patty slowly built their first version of the great house at Monticello, the Revolutionary War was heating up. Patty, with difficulty, bore 5 children, but only 2 girls survived. Thomas's political career developed to the point where he was often away from home, but after he authored and signed the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia, he resolved never again to leave his wife. He was elected the governor of Virginia, just as that state became the Revolution's last battleground. The Revolutionary War ended in 1781, and Thomas gladly retired altogether to my family, my farm, and my books. But Patty continued to want to bear her treasured husband a son, and late in the summer of 1782, she died of kidney failure at the age of 33, 4 months after having borne yet another girl. Thomas was so devastated by her death that he never remarried. He mourned her for the rest of his life, even as he helped to frame the peace in France and then became the first Secretary of State, the second Vice President, and the third President of the United States. This story is true. Thomas Jefferson was such an obsessive letter writer and record keeper that we know where he was and what he was doing nearly every day of his adult life. Every significant thing he says in My Thomas comes from his contemporary writings. My Thomas by Roberta Grimes is now available at Barnes & Noble, Costco, Target, Books A Million, Hudson Booksellers, Kmart, Walmart, Sam's Club, Walgreens, CVS, and online at Amazon.com. You can visit Roberta Grimes online at www.robertagrimes.com.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Unwilling to be the government's deadly assassin, gifted psychic Kahara Mitchell went AWOL and ended up buried under rubble in the wake of a great tsunami. She regained consciousness far from Earth on the medical ship of a Daguerrean intergalactic fleet. Has she been rescued or abducted by aliens? The Chalice of Carrie, Kahira O'Donnell's latest paranormal science fiction romance, is the passionate story of an Earth woman and her destined mates, twin kings from another galaxy. Kahara uses her gifts fighting alongside Lords Rom and Ra in a war that will determine the destiny of galaxies. The Chalice of Carrie by Kahira O'Donnell is now available at KahiraO'Donnell.com or at Amazon.com. You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. What Happened in Benghazi is revealed by Nicholas Genix, author of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. He informs the American people that President Obama deceived them by advocating a strong foreign policy prior to the 2012 presidential election, and Hillary Clinton supported this deception. As the title infers, there is a connection between Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. Ample evidence informs Americans that Obama's early indoctrination in the Quran developed an affinity for Islam, why the Quran is the source of discontent in many countries, and why the Obama foreign policy deception led to poor military action and caused the loss of American lives in Benghazi. Genix provides 36 questions for the Select Committee on Benghazi to validate if Americans are justified to mistrust President Obama and Hillary Clinton. An overview of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi is presented on the website www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Annie Callahan, dedicated to negotiating a position for Earth within the Daguerrean Coalition, had trained for 3 years to become an Earth ambassador. Yet, the very eve of her arrival at the capital ruling planet, she is claimed as destined mate to an oversized, mating-maddened vamp who swears he will never release her. Lord Aztaran, king of the Macian sector, has waited over 900 years for his destined mate. Having found her as an alpha vamp, he is unable to relinquish Annie, virtually holding her hostage until he can claim her. Yet Macians cannot survive without their mate's love. How could he strip her of her citizenship, her ambassadorship, and her freedom and expect to win her heart? With All That I Am by Kahira O'Donnell is the latest book in this exciting series, The Daguerrean Chronicles, guaranteed to keep readers coming back for more. With All That I Am by Kahira O'Donnell is available on Amazon.com and KahiraO'Donnell.com.
Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. We're coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is LASARA FIREFOX ALLEN, author of Jailbreaking the Goddess. Her website, www.lasarafirefoxallen.com. LASARA, we were getting into how you can be not only moving up and backwards and forwards on the scale of archetypical expression, but embracing more than one at once. Do you find that as difficult, or do we just automatically do it?
I think a lot of us automatically do it. I think so. There's a discipline in feminism. It's called difference feminism, and it's French. It's a French sort of movement, and it's not so active now. It was it's from a little bit ago, not long ago. But one of the terms that's used in difference feminism is about multivalence. So difference feminism is about it saying women are different from men. It's not saying why, right? I believe that women are different from men. I believe that a lot of what we experience as womanhood or manhood, as the masculine and the feminine, are socializations. So, I'm not, when I say women are this way, I'm not saying that we're created or destined or born that way, but it is the result of how we were brought up. And some of it, of course, is biological, but we don't know how much of it or what parts. And so it gets really tricky when we start saying things are based in biology when we don't really know. So I want to stay away from that. But I do want to say that, women and men are different. We're treated differently. We behave differently. We respond to information differently. We process information differently. So one of the terms in difference feminism, one of the terms that's talked about that's used to describe the difference between men and women is that women are multivalent. And multivalent means that we are operating on more than one, plane at a time. And so I think that, and that's used when, like, you're having a conversation with a friend and your kid comes up and says, "Hey, Mom, I need this thing right now." And you go, "Okay," and you take care of it, and you're still having the conversation with your friend, right?
Right. Now I have to say that I think overall what you're saying is true, but boy, I have known some men that are amazingly multidimensional and gifted in that way as well. So what do you think makes the difference there?
Well, I think that, and I think too that some of the younger folks have really different conditioning than, I'm 45. My kids are 16 and 19. I have a number of younger friends, and I think that the kids have really different conditioning than we do, and really are behaving differently because of that. I think that's why I'm saying, like, I don't think that it's biology. I think that it's socialization.
Gotcha.
And the cool thing about that is that when we realize that we're doing something out of conditioning, we can change it, right?
Right.
We can change biology too, but it takes a lot more effort.
Some ways we really don't want to go there.
Right. Or maybe we do. And, in the cases of, like, my younger kid is trans, and I have a number of trans friends, and their biology is, not in alignment with their neurology even. So when there is an actual situation where your biology is not meeting up with the rest of you, then really having the option to change your biology is, like, really amazing and so important, But I just I really like to. A lot of people like to say we were just built that way, or it's just the way things are. And I think that when we put to biology things that may not be biology, that we're kind of putting ourselves in a corner.
Yeah, really. And in this day and age, I'm seeing a lot more transgender. I don't know if they're just being able to be more candid about it, or if there's something going on. Do you have any idea? I
personally believe that it's just that there are more transgender people who are out.
Got it. That makes sense.
In my research, so I want to say something about gender too that I think is really important. The binary is not the most common format for gender in the world. I think in indigenous cultures, and I don't know for sure, I don't have the numbers, I don't have the stats, and I hope that someone will do a real study on this. I believe that it is far more common to have more genders than two than it is to have just two genders. Culturally.
Okay, yeah, it's definitely strange. All the lines are blurring, and I think that if we pay attention to what's going on, we actually have more mobility than if we're stuck really into one place, in which case
Absolutely.
brings my next question. Do you see people get stuck in a particular archetype to their detriment? And would you speak to that?
I think it's totally possible to get stuck to, yes, I think that we can get stuck in an archetype or a phase, right, of our development and then not shift out of that. That's not necessarily problematic. One of the things that I really believe, and I created a quiz so people can go and do this if they go to my website, LASARAFIREFOXALLEN.com, and they click on the Jailbreaking the Goddess tab. There will be a drop-down menu, and there are a bunch of options on how to interact with different media and read reviews and whatnot. But also there's a quiz that I developed. I'm actually developing another quiz right now too. And the quiz is just for you to figure out in that moment, which is your dominant aspect, right? And it's fun, and you get to learn a little bit about all the different aspects. So I don't think it's necessarily problematic to have a dominant aspect. The thing that's important is that when we realize that we do have a dominant aspect, that we realize what the shortfalls of that aspect might be and how that might be affecting us.
Got it. So other people often try to keep person trapped in an archetype beyond its shelf life. Could you speak to this and how to work with it when it happens?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that any of us who have done any amount of personal work, on ourselves knows and will recognize is that when we start changing, it disrupts people's lives, right?
Right.
So if you have a habit that's not necessarily serving you, but it's really comfortable for your family or your friends, then if you start trying to get healthier and change that habit, then other people are going to have a hard time because it's going to affect your relationship with them, right?
I've seen where people will go back to their family of origin for a holiday, and their spouses will be looking at them like they grew a second head because they're already dropping back into their role in the family. Is that where you're seeing it too?
Right. Yeah, that definitely can happen. I mean, that's definitely one of the places that it can happen. There's another, the process of as you start examining yourself and start growing more and you decide, let's use a really basic example. You're like, okay, I don't walk enough, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start walking every day instead of when I get home from work or from school or whatever, instead of sitting down and watching TV, I'm going to go for a walk. Right. That's great. And so you start doing it. And then your best friend is like, but what about the fact that we always like to, be on Skype when you get home from work. And now I don't have you during that time of the day. Right. 'Cause you're out walking. And you might be like, okay, well, why don't you come and you can walk with me? And they might be like, that's not what I'm doing right now. And so they want you to stay the same, right? Not out of some evil desire, just out of a desire not to have to examine their own motivations or their own patterns or their own habits, right?
Exactly.
So
go ahead.
Yeah. So the systems, right? We live in systems. We operate within systems. I'm an element in a system, right? Systems within systems. There are systems inside of me. And
we're going to have to take a break, and I would like to pick up on the other side talking about systems. So LASARA and I will be back on the flip side of this commercial break. You're listening to The Science of Magic on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, the place where altruistic professionals of science and the esoteric create common ground for the betterment of our world. You can always listen to previous transformative broadcasts on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. If you enjoy reading a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love From Out of the Woodwork by William S. Peckham. Sean Kennedy, a Toronto contractor, buys derelict houses, guts them, and turns them into multi-family dwellings. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, a century house in ruins, and starts the renovation, the house fights back. He is visited by ghosts of owners past. His visions are triggered by touching an oak mantle, reading a faded letter, opening an old locket, or opening a brand new casket in the basement. These visions will take you on a trip across southern Ontario from Niagara Falls to Toronto to Kingston. From Out of the Woodwork is now available in paperback and on your favorite electronic reader. To order your copy of From Out of the Woodwork, go to www.williamspeckham.com. That's www.williamspeckham.com.
Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, bringing together gifted people of service to the world. We're coming to you through the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Our website is www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is LASARA FIREFOX ALLEN, author of Jailbreaking the Goddess. Her website, www.lasarafirefoxallen.com. LASARA, we were going to pick up talking about systems, so would you mind?
My pleasure. So we exist within systems, and we have systems inside of us, right? And so we can affect change starting at any point, and whether we intend it to or not, that first step, that pebble in the water will affect all the systems that we touch. So people are invested sometimes in you remaining the same. So I offer an initiation cycle based on the work in this book, in Jailbreaking the Goddess. And the first 2 weeks of the course, it's a 7-month initiation cycle. And the first 2 weeks is basically preparing people for the process of creating change in their lives. And so one of the things that I really encourage all of my students to do is to talk to the people that matter to them. right? To get them on board, to enroll them in this process, because one, it will affect those relationships, and two, any kind of endeavor of personal growth that we embark upon, it is essential to have support systems in place, in my opinion. So that's, systems, being aware of the systems that we're operating within is important. And so another area that I want to talk about as far as like the systems idea goes is when we have a spiritual system, right? And we have political values or ethics and, social values and ethics, right? Hopefully our political and social values and ethics line up, right? Right. So, but not always. And so that's one of the areas when I'm working with clients one-on-one, I do a lot of work with what I call, like your daily value systems and your ideal value systems, because sometimes we're dealing with an interrupt. Sometimes our ideal values and our pragmatic values are not aligned.
And that creates a fair amount of stress or angst, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And so then when that's the case, we'll find ourselves actually actively working against ourselves.
Exactly. Right? I would like to have you address for our listeners, how can a person use ritual to transform from one archetype to the other, or to more fully embody an archetype?
That is a good question. So in Jailbreaking the Goddess, I offer three, basically, what you can consider them 3 degrees of ritual. As a format, I offer a format. I give a lot of flexibility. I really encourage people to own it and change it so that it fits their own sets of values and aesthetic. And the first ritual is basically like introducing yourself to that aspect and inviting her to be present. And then the second is a process of initiation. So, you're pledging to learn from her. You're saying, how can I learn from you? What, show yourself to me, and I will do works for you. And then the third is dedication. So if you find that one of these aspects, or you might dedicate yourself to all of them even, but if you find that one, for example, is definitely your predominant mode, you might want to do a dedication ritual. And at that point, you're committing to being her hands and her, her manifest entity in the world, to doing her work and allowing her to work through you. So there are actually a lot of different techniques that I offer in the book that will help people to use ritual and ritual practices and magical practices to get to know the aspects more deeply.
Very nice. So you speak of embodiment. Would you describe embodiment and explain what the benefits are?
So I want to say I want to talk a little bit about 2 different aspects that I think of when we're talking about embodiment in this context. One element that I think is the most important is that we, as a culture, we are trained to override our physiology a lot. And so I work a lot with my clients and students on rebuilding that deep knowing that lives in our body, right? Mm-hmm. So being able to bring ourselves present in the consciousness that is in our body, right? So we say things like, my gut thinks this, but my mind thinks that, and so a lot of what I'm doing with my students and clients, my coaching clients, is to help them to, again, find that alignment, really, because when we're in alignment, we are no longer fighting against ourselves.
Got it.
So
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
As our worldview becomes more expansive, do you think our archetypes need to expand also?
I do. I believe, and the 5 that I'm offering here is a step in that direction. I think that one of the things that I think is important to remember about magic, for example, is that and this is going to sound blasphemous to some, but at some point, someone made up the thing that you believe is written in stone.
Interesting.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It might have been a god. It might have been a teacher. It might have been an author. It might have been your great aunt. It might have been, Moses, But at some point, someone made up the thing that you believe is incontrovertible.
That's a reframer for you, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's so essential. The reason that it's so essential that we remember that is that it empowers us. In chapter 1 of Jailbreaking the Goddess, I say, I freely admit that I'm making this all up as I go along, and I invite you to do the same.
Exactly. Oh, interesting. Exactly. So I have about a little over a minute. Do you mind telling us where people can find your books?
They can find my books everywhere. They're on Amazon, but they're also, I really request that if you can afford the extra couple of bucks, buy from your local indie. And if they aren't carrying the book yet, have them order it. It's, widely distributed. They should be able to get it, no problem. And you can support your local independent bookstore or magic shop while you're also buying a book that will, potentially change your life. So that's one way to do it. Also, please visit my website, LASARAFIREFOXALLEN.com. Get on my mailing list. I will have an initiation cycle coming up starting at Salon in early November. And I have other stuff going on all the time. I'm adding more online offerings this week. And so get on my mailing list. Follow me at Facebook. I'm very active over there. So, and I love interaction, like post on my wall, drop me a note about the book. And if you have any questions, just get in touch with me.
All right. Well, it's gone very quickly. Thank you for being a part of this show. This has been the Science of Magic. This has been the Science of Magic. Remember, you can always listen to past thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge and comforted with love as you express all that you are.